Hello and welcome to the Modern Fairy Sightings Podcast, where we listen to people's fairy encounters. But take heed, we're not talking about winged Tinkerbells here. These are real fairies, real encounters that took people like you and I by surprise. Stay a while and hear their stories. My name is Jo Hickey Hall, and I'm a folklore researcher. Dear listener, I hope you're well. I know very little about astrology personally, but my goodness me, folks have been feeling that intense energy that Mercury retrograde has held us all in over the last weeks. Since we moved towards the new moon in Taurus this week, it's like a dam has burst and we're moving into the full flow of being. A reminder here to trust your trip and go forth with what you're being called to do. We've had a lot of new members join Patreon over the last month, which is so wonderful, and I'm very grateful for all their support. It is an honour to be able to create these episodes, and I could not do this without the Curious Crew community, so really, with all my heart, thank you so much. A special shout out to Sarah and Amanda who have joined on the Weird Folk tier. Welcome. I've mentioned previously that if we get to 300 members, I will begin to create weekly episodes. Let's jump into this with both feet. At the moment, we are around 129 members, which is amazing. So if you feel moved to join us and support what we're doing here, then head over to Patreon and enjoy all the bonus episodes I've created there. Often the bonuses might be related to folklore or other encounters that reflect those in the main episodes. At other times it might be Q&As with guests, and there are also little videos of my trips to various sacred sites and quarter festivals. You'll get to take part in the regular online community events, and for the first time next month we will actually be holding an in-person exclusive event for patrons who can attend. All very exciting. This episode has a particularly magical quality. In part, it's the story of a house and all the fascinating events which took place there, but it's also about a family which, by the looks of it, seem to have been experiencing extraordinary events through generations. Like many of the folk I speak to, some of these experiences are beautiful and wondrous, while others are quite frightening, so a reminder here that this podcast is not suitable for children or for those who are sensitive to creepy content. On the bonus episode, we'll hear about a particularly unnerving event soon after the departure of a relative. In that same bonus, we'll hear our guest's experience at the famous 800-year-old oak tree Old Knobley in Essex. I hope you enjoyed the discussion. Thank you so much to our guest for sharing her stories. And if you would like to get in touch, you can contact me at scarletofthefae@gmail.com or through the website at scarletofthefae.com. See you at the end for a quick chat. Time to run away. Time to run
So it was my grandparents' house, and we'd go there in the summer holidays and go and stay with them. And it just had such a pull, this place. Every time you went there, you just felt so drawn to it. And you'd walk, you just had such a sense of age when you walked into it. You just knew it was old, and it was like a character in itself. So you just walk into it and you'd feel the coolness as you went inside, because it's all these stone walls. And it had the most beautiful garden at the back of it that my granddad tended beautifully, with an orchard at the end of it, cherry trees, and he had beautiful flower beds, and it was on sort of top of a hill and you could see for miles, and it's all just hillside and countryside around it, and it was just absolutely just magical place. And my dad talked about it all the time in just such wistful tones about what a beautiful place it was to grow up. And it was just lovely to visit. It just felt such a it just felt like a character. It really felt like a character in itself. So we'd go there in the summer holidays, and when I was there on a visit, I mean, one of the neighbours had a cockerel, so you'd always get woken up by the cockerel.
Mm-hmm.
So I know this was summertime, and I know it was quite early in the morning. But I was in the same bedroom that was my dad's bedroom when he was little, so I was staying in there, and I just looked up at the window, and it was quite a small window above the bed. It was quite a small room, and there was just this little ball of light in the window, and I remember looking at it and just thinking, oh, that's a fairy. Like, not, oh, what's that, or that's a bit of light. It wasn't sunlight. It wasn't, there's a bit of sunlight shining. It was moving about in a deliberate flitting way, if you like. And I just thought, that's a fairy. I know that's a fairy. It's golden light, really warm, beautiful, warm feeling. Just looking at it, it was lovely. And I just knew what it was. I just looked at it and thought, well, I know what that is. It was like seeing a bird and saying, oh, look, there's a robin. It was just so completely matter of fact, and it just felt so natural and normal to me, and I didn't question it at all.
That's lovely. So how old were you at the time?
I must have been about 7-ish, probably around that. All these things happened around that sort of age. It was well before senior school. It was in junior school. So I would have been about 6, 7, something like that.
Yeah. And had you had any experiences there before?
I hadn't had anything there before. No. I saw things when I came back home, back to my parents' home. I saw things around about the same time, a bit later, but that was the only thing I saw in that house.
Yeah. How big was it?
It was small. It was really small. If I sort of put my finger and my forethumb together and get a circle, it's like that sort of size,
Yeah.
Bigger than a 50p, but not, not massive.
Yeah.
Probably like a ping pong ball size, something like that.
Right. Yeah. So big enough.
Yeah, it was big, and you could tell from the movement, it was a deliberate movement. It wasn't just, as a bit of light hovers on the wall, it just hovers backwards and forwards, doesn't it? This was something watching me, I think, and just flitting about, and then went off, wasn't interested in me, obviously, and just went off. But it was just a ball of golden light. I couldn't see anything else inside it, but I just knew what it was. And then I remember saying to my mum and dad later, I saw a fairy upstairs. And they were just a bit like, okay. And then that was probably around what sparked my dad off telling me about the pixies. And I'd remembered that he'd said to me that he had seen little people, little pixies, don't know what else to call them really, that ran around his bedroom when he was little. And I remember him telling me that when he was ill in bed this one time, and he'd had pneumonia, or double pneumonia, I think he said. And he'd been really ill, so he was laid up in bed. And I mean, this is like the 1940s, so medicine's not brilliant either, so he probably was like, literally just told to lie in bed. And these little things were running about on his bed and just being a nuisance. Like they knew he couldn't defend himself really, or he was just lying there. They were just being a nuisance, and they were being naughty, and they were pulling hairs on his body and just being generally horrible to him. So I remember him saying about that.
How did he tell you when he said that? Was he just very, very open about it, or because they were pulling the hairs on his legs, weren't they?
He told me that years and years and years ago, and I remembered it recently. So I would have been, I don't know, maybe a teenager or maybe younger, because I had told them about things that I'd seen. So he may have just told me about it then. But just quite a matter of fact, really. He doesn't have any sense of like, oh, I shouldn't be telling you this, or embarrassed about it. He just saw them. My parents are quite religious, and both of them, well, they're very religious, both of them. And I think they just see it as it's probably demons or something teasing them. So they just, I think that's how they think about it. Whereas I'm not, and I don't really I don't really think that. But I think that's why he just feels quite matter of fact about it, because he just thinks, well, that's what it is.
So he's Did he ever sort of indicate that then, that he thought they were demons, or is that how they kind of tend to talk about?
That's how they tend
Things
to talk about
supernatural.
anything supernatural. That's what it would
Right.
be. It would be something devilish, or it wouldn't be fairies or pixies or anything that you couldn't explain. There would be an explanation, and it would be evil. That would be the explanation. But he never said it felt evil. And I just that's how they think. That's just the way they think. So I think that's how they, instead of me getting a reaction of like, and of course it was nonsense.
Yeah.
They believe it because that's how they believe things and interpret things. So
that's nice that he shared it with you, though.
Yeah, I mean, they used to read. I remember when I was little, they used to read all sorts of books. They had all the sort of in the sort of late 70s, early 80s. There was lots of sort of Bermuda Triangle books and Chariots of the Gods. I don't know if you've ever heard of that one.
Yeah.
They used to read all that sort of stuff, and I never really was able to understand, like, how can you be religious and read all this stuff? But that's how they interpret it. It's like, it's devilish or something, I guess. That's how they interpret things. But they've always been very open and interested in. My dad was always interested in paranormal stuff. He used to get, what's the magazine, 40 Times? He always used to get that.
Gosh, sounds like they were more open-minded than perhaps they let on.
I really don't know, because if you knew them, you'd think. And when I've told people these stories, they've gone, "What, your parents?" And I'm just like, yeah, I don't know. I don't really know how to describe it. But yeah, they are open-minded on stuff like that. But I think they just think it's quite. I don't know. I think my mum is quite witchy, but just. She doesn't. I mean, she only recently found out that when I did the family tree that she's Irish, so she didn't even know that. So we found all this Irish family, and she still, to this day, she's just like, well, I don't know where it came from. It's like, well, that's your family tree. But I think she's kind of repressed a lot of stuff, and she's just, because she's a Christian, and that's her life, that's her calling, that's her faith. She just pushes all that other stuff to one side and just thinks, well, I know it's there, but it would be like the devil testing you or whatever. Like,
it's interesting.
So I knew that's the same bedroom that my dad saw the little pixies in, and then when I'd asked him about it again recently, he'd said that he used to see him all the time. The only story he told me was about when he was ill. But he said he used to see them all the time. He used to run about the bedroom all the time, just run about the floor, just, being a bit mischievous.
And did he say what they looked like?
I asked him about this, and he just said they were very small. So we talked about this recently. He just said they were very small, and he used the word like pixies.
Right.
And I said, well, what were they, how were they dressed? What were they dressed like? And he just said it was, all he could remember was that it was old-fashioned. Okay. Now, if he saw that in the 1940s, I think he's saying old-fashioned, older than that. So I don't know, really oldie, worldy stuff, I guess. But he's just kind of matter of fact, really, that they were just there. That was just part of his childhood experience, that they were there. He had to leave to go to boarding school, so he didn't spend all that much longer there.
Okay.
So he didn't get to have any more length of time in that house, probably that much longer after that, because he did go to boarding school quite young.
Right. Yeah. So this would have happened before he went off.
Yeah, so he's young. He's probably, this, we're talking 6, 7 again, the same sort of age that I was.
Same sort of age, yeah.
And the only horrible thing, well, there is another horrible thing a bit later, but the only horrible thing he saw was when, I think this was during wartime, because his uncle was in the Navy, and he was staying with them. But he was sharing a bed with my dad, and his uncle was much older.
Mm.
And my dad saw at the end of the bed, like this wasn't like the pixies. This was bigger. So this was like, you know, 1.5 2 foot maybe. It was bigger, and it was perched on the end of the bed, and it was staring at him. And now he used the term goblin for this. He didn't use the term pixie. He said goblin.
Mm.
And it had sorcery eyes, and all he talks about when he talks about it is just the grin, this evil grin, this horrible grin. And he just says it was horrible, evil grin staring at me from the end of the bed. He said he was just petrified, frozen, and he didn't wake his uncle. And he said to me, I don't know why I didn't. But obviously it was because he was so frightened, and he was just sat there staring at him. And that was the only of those incidences that he said it felt malevolent. That wasn't nice, and it frightened him. But whether it was or not, I don't know. It just didn't look nice. It had a nasty grin, and it was staring. It may have had no nasty intentions at all. It's just
I'm getting a feel for these particular sorts of characters, and they crop up, and they often do this to small children.
Yeah.
And they turn up when people are going through a really tough time. I mean, I've spoken to people who have been in, you know, very, very difficult situations as children. And I mean, so, you know, he's there, his uncle, who I'm sure that they were all very concerned about, is come home. And imagine what that man himself has gone through.
Yeah.
You know, how it just makes you wonder, doesn't
trauma,
it?
Isn't it? It's attracted to trauma, probably.
Exactly. And so whether that was something that was connected to your uncle's consciousness in some way, or attracted to whatever he was going through, or whether you know, as a little boy, you can imagine
it
not
must
only
have
is
been
the war
terrifying.
going on. Absolutely. Yeah, it must have been. Really must have been. And not only that, but a member of your family is right in the thick of it, which of course, you know, for most people that was the case, but it doesn't lessen, you know, the feeling of what people must have been going through. So this is interesting, isn't it? So I would absolutely trust what he, you know, what he felt.
He definitely felt. He said he definitely felt it was nasty. It wasn't a pleasant experience. Whereas the other little things running around, they didn't bother him. I think they were just like mice. It was like having mice running about. Oh, there they are.
Yeah.
They're no harm. They just run around. They don't do anything. But he said that he was really frightened by that. It did really scare him.
And he never saw it again then?
No, not that he remembers. I think he would remember if he'd seen it again, you know. But they're the only incidences.
And how old would he have been then? Do you know?
This is all roughly the same time period, I think. Right. I don't, you know, he's young. It's because he wasn't there. He went off to boarding school, so he wouldn't have been there.
Yeah.
But at any other time.
Well, even during the war, would he have been still there, or would he have come home?
Well, this is probably so. It's probably just it'd be after the war, I would think. So I know his uncle was in the Navy, so maybe he was just on shore leave or something. But they had all been through the war. His father had as well. His father had just come home from the war. So when did it end? 46? Is that right?
45.
45. So this is probably like this is going to be 46, 47. It's going to be around that time. It may be the end of it. Because he was born in 1940, so if he's like 7, it's going to be, he's about 6, 7, it's going to be 46, 47, something like that. So probably after the war. But they would have, his father had just come home from the war, and his uncle, I know his uncle was in the Navy.
Healing has helped me many times in my life when I'd reached a point where something needed to change. In 2005, I trained with Martin Brofman to learn the body mirror system of healing, which was life-changing for me. It's based on the idea that the parts of your body that don't work well reflect the parts of your life that don't work well, and about which you have tension in your consciousness. The understanding is that tension is stress and stress causes symptoms. In a distance healing or in-person session, I move up the chakras, returning each one to wholeness using a colour map. During the process, I see images and situations, I hear words or receive impressions that tell me something about what caused the tension in that person's life. The feedback at the end of the session is a really big part of the healing. If you're interested in a chakra healing session, you can contact me at scarletofthefae@gmail.com. Yeah, it makes you wonder whether, all this time, although he has his faith, is it just what kind of Christian faith do they have?
It just well,
like Church of England kind of.
That's quite a complicated.
Okay.
I don't really know. Yeah, I don't really know how to answer that. The simplest way is to say Christian, but they are in a church that is has different beliefs to Church of England, but is the basic premise is the same as Church of England, I guess, but it's different. It is different.
Yeah. So they obviously got their faith, but then he's always had, it seems, that interest in
his mother was a country girl, and he says that she was very superstitious, and she would. I asked him about this recently because I only ever got to see my grandparents when we went in the summer holidays. I didn't get to grow up with them and know them as much as I would have liked to have. So I asked him about that. What do you mean by that? And I know she came from deep out in the countryside, and he said, "Oh, she was just very superstitious, follow the old ways, that kind of thing." So maybe there's something in the family.
Maybe. Did you ever notice anything in the house that, kind of like horseshoes or certain traditions?
Oh my God, I can't believe you just said that. She had so many horse brasses. The house was covered. She had a big fireplace. It was covered in horse brasses. She had so many. She used to polish the horse brasses all the time. Put them everywhere, absolutely everywhere.
Right.
And little brass figurines all around the fireplaces, and she had hundreds of horse brasses.
Oh wow, what were the figurines like around the fireplace? I like the sound of that.
I don't remember. I just remember there were brass figures everywhere, and lots of brass horseshoes and things like that. And I remember being fascinated then when I was little. I thought they were beautiful, and she'd be really proud of them and polish them all the time. But yeah, I can't remember.
That's so sweet. Were you allowed to play with them?
Yeah, it was. You could touch them and play with them. It was lovely. Yeah.
Oh, there's such nice memories, isn't it? When you remember that as a kid, I remember going down to my nannies, and whatever they had there, then you'd return the next year. If you went there, and you'd remember those few little things that you played with, and they just feel so precious, don't they? That's such an intense memory, that those objects, they really get right into your psyche, don't they? And when you see something similar, it just takes you right back, doesn't it?
Yes, there's certain smells or something can just send you, rocket you straight back there, can't it?
Yeah.
And it was beautiful. They were such gentle people as well. They were lovely, and the surrounding area was so beautiful. And the garden was so beautiful. It was such a lovely place to play as a child.
Yeah,
it was exactly the sort of place that you would go fairy hunting. It just felt like, if you're going to see fairies, you're going to see them here, definitely.
It's going to be there.
Yeah.
So it's right in the middle of the country. It's just, just fields as far as you can see, that sort of area.
I mean, it's not now. It's all built up around it now. Then it was, yeah.
Yeah. Were there any kind of little streams or rivers or anything anywhere near it?
At the end of the road, there's a big paddock, I think, and there's just loads of fields around there. That's still there to some degree, and there is water around there. Mm-hmm. I know there is a river or a stream or something around there. It's a bit marshy, that bit, I think, because I remember my dad telling me a story about somebody coming home drunk from the pub down the lane and thinking it was grass and walking into it and then drowned it in the marshy bit.
Oh my goodness.
So there's definitely water around there, and I think that there's like a sort of swampy, marshy bit. Because I remember that story, because that sort of haunted me when I was little. Walk past there, just like, ooh.
Yeah, that is interesting. And is it on a crossroads?
Um, I don't know. I don't know. I don't think so. But no,
No.
no, the house wouldn't be. No, there may be a crossroads at the bottom or the top. The house itself wasn't on a crossroads. No.
Mm. So do you remember anything of what your grandmother used to tell you about the house, or any of her own beliefs at all?
I don't, this is just something my parents have said to me recently when I started asking them about this stuff. Is that she was very superstitious, and I kind of pressed them on that because I wanted to know more about what did you mean by that.
Yeah.
And I think they just, when they say, oh, she was superstitious, I think probably at the time they were just like, oh, well, she does all this silly stuff, and that's not what we believe anymore. If you see what I mean.
Oh, we really want to know the silly stuff.
Yeah,
Tell
I
us the
mean,
silly
I
stuff.
desperately want
It's
to know
like,
that, but I don't
yeah.
think it is. Yeah.
For some people, it's too much. And if they open that, then it just brings all sorts of questions into the room. And it's kind of, I'd rather just
Yeah.
not to look at it. And, you can understand that because it rocks the status quo, doesn't it? And
Mm.
then they have to really think about, okay, well, if this is something, then what does that say about the beliefs that I presently
Yeah,
hold?
if they
It's
investigate it too much, you don't want to rock your faith, do you? Faith is faith, isn't it? You have to
mm,
have faith, so you don't want to investigate something, I guess, that's going to disrupt that.
no, that's it.
That was really important to them. So yeah, they didn't ask any more about that. But I did say to my dad recently, I've asked him this a couple of times, and he's remembered this now. That he kept saying to me his sister had seen things there in the house as well. His sister has seen things. Now, I haven't spoken to her about that because I don't really want to broach it. But he does say that she had seen stuff. And again, they did, because they didn't really, because he got sent off to boarding school, they didn't really grow up that much together. So they would have been able to share those experiences. But he had asked her, since I've been asking about it, he had asked her. And she had said, yeah, there were other things that happened there. And he said to me that it was either her or somebody else had seen some writing appear on the wall.
Oh my goodness.
But I haven't spoken to her about it because I just don't know. I don't think she'd be very open to talking about it, and I don't want to, upset them.
Stir it
So
up.
yeah, I wouldn't feel comfortable asking her about it, although I'd dearly love to know a bit more. But yeah, that apparently someone saw this writing appear on the wall and then disappear.
Yeah, there's
But
probably lots of stories there, and I imagine the mother, like your grandmother, probably, possibly
yeah,
was aware of things in that house.
well, after she died and my dad went up to stay with my granddad, we'd all gone to this was before the funeral, I think. My dad went up there first. Yeah, so my dad had gone up there, and then me and my mum came up later, and my dad was staying up there with my granddad. And they were sat in, so the front, when you go in the front door, there'd be what you'd call like the parlour, I guess. It
Yeah.
had a massive cellar underneath it because it used to be a pub, so it had this enormous cellar downstairs.
Mhm.
And that room is the one that went straight down into the cellar, and that's the one where like all her horse brasses were on the fireplace in that room as well.
In the parlour,
In the parlour, yeah.
which would have been the old pub lounge, I guess, the pub.
Yes, and I would think because the cellar was right at the back of that, so I guess you would have had the bar sort of there and then access down to the cellar.
Yeah.
I never went in the cellar because I wasn't allowed to go down there because it was too dangerous. But apparently there were just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of bottles in there that had to be cleared away.
Amazing. Yeah.
So my dad was staying there with my granddad, and this was just after my granddad passed, and they were sat in that parlour one night, and my granddad said something's trying to get in.
This section is available for all members of the Curious Crew who support me on Patreon. Join us there for this and more bonus content. Patreon.com/the Modern Fairy Sightings Podcast. So you had, when you wrote to me and told me about that really beautiful, almost a dreamlike experience.
Yes, and this is when I this is when I was a bit the same age, sort of 7-ish, around about this time. So this was, I never saw anything again at my grandparents' house. This was when in my home, my mum and dad's home, when I was little.
So this is back home,
This is back
right?
home. So there's a few things happened all around the same time. So I know it was midsummer because my birthday's midsummer, and it was round about that time. And you know, when it's really, really light in the evening, and it's light at like 9:30, almost 10 o'clock, really, really light. And my bedtime was 8 o'clock, so I was sent off to bed at 8 o'clock. But when it's light like that outside, you can't sleep, and I'm just sitting there, just bored, and really feeling hard done by. I'm just a bit miserable and annoyed, and I want to play and I want to go outside, and it's all sunny, and I'm sitting here in bed and it's awful, and just feeling a bit sorry for myself.
Yeah.
And I can remember this as clear as day. I was absolutely awake. I was not asleep. I was sat there. I was bored, and I was sat there and I was annoyed. And this, what I can only describe as a periscope, I don't really know, you know, that's what I thought at the time, and that's what I remember it as. This little sort of periscope thing came up at the window, and out of that flew these little peacocks, little tiny peacocks, all tiny, tiny little peacocks, all flew out of it. And on the little peacocks were little golden people, tiny, tiny little golden people. And they were, you know, there wasn't any sort of gender about them. They were just little golden people, no wings, just small gold people. And they just flew out of the periscope and sort of floated about the window and just put on this display. I sort of floated about. I'm just mesmerised by it. This was the most beautiful. This is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, and just felt this incredible sense of euphoria. That if you've ever, if you've ever been injected with a drug, I had a tooth out, and you get injected with a drug, and you just get this incredible like way feeling.
Yeah.
You've never taken anything recreational like that, you'll know that euphoric feeling, and it was just like that, like 1,000 times that, just absolutely flooded with just joy at watching this. And I looked up at the light above me, and around the light were little old-fashioned carousel horses with the stick, like the curly sort of gold stick and the horse on it.
Yeah, Mary Poppins style.
Yeah, absolutely Mary Poppins style, and not attached to anything, but just bobbing around the light, like the light was the carousel, and they were bobbing around it. And the little golden people sat on the little horses and bobbed around that. And I don't know how long it lasted. It was quite quick, I think, but it was that sort of sense of time has stopped kind of feeling. So I really don't know, but I just was so engrossed in it. It was just absolutely incredible, the most incredible feeling and the most incredible thing I've ever seen. And then it ended when I sort of looked away and a red light ran across the ceiling, and then it was gone. It was all gone.
Oh, what a beautiful experience that is.
I tried to get it back so many times.
Yeah.
I just thought about it all the time, and you go to bed and just think, I hope they come back. I hope they come back. And I never saw it again. Nothing. Never came back. Never saw anything like it again. But around the same time, I had this recurring dream that I used to call the Burgundy Kingdom, and it was. I don't remember much about it. I don't know what went on in the dreams, but I do remember that I had this reoccurring dream over and over again, and it was like a sort of medieval kingdom, like a fairy kingdom, and it had all towers and castles and things, and it was a land, but it was all burgundy and shades of scarlet, and everything was red basically in it. And I remember having that recurring dream over and over again around the same time. But I never, I only remembered that recently, the dream thing, when I was thinking about these experiences. And I thought, oh my God, I remember trying to have that dream over and over again. I had it probably like, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 times, something like that. And then it went away. And I kept thinking, I hope I get to go back to the Burgundy Kingdom tonight. And I can't remember anything that happened there or happened in those dreams. But I knew there was a place I was going to at night, but that went away eventually as well. It never came back. But it was
That's
all around the
very
same time.
interesting. So this was after the experience at your grandparents was
Yeah,
first,
it
and
would
this
be
came
after that.
afterwards.
Yeah, yeah. The little fairy orb was first, definitely.
Yeah.
There was
Gosh, so
I never really tell anybody this one because it just sounds so ridiculous. And I remember telling people at the time, and everybody just be like my parents sort of looking at me. Like, I mean, they were surprisingly willing to believe the fairy stuff, although I think they probably just thought I was having a dream. But this one, everyone sort of looks at me like I'm a bit mad. But we were downstairs in the living room, and then you can see, on the dining room, sorry, and then you can see there's a garden goes all the way down, and then there's an alleyway, and then over the other side there's another street, and there's a house that you can see straight from my parents' dining room, and it was a semi-detached house, and half of it was white and half of it was brown. So I want people in one side painted it white, so it had like this two-tone house. And my parents were sat facing me, and I was facing the house. And again, this is the same age, like 7, around about that age. I was looking at that house, and I saw this. I'm describing it as a UFO because that's exactly what it was. It was an unidentified flying object, but I'm not saying it was aliens. It was just something in the sky that I just don't know what it was. And it was silver, and it was banana shaped. And I think that's the bit that makes everybody laugh, because it was banana shaped. But that's exactly what it was. It was chrome coloured, silver coloured, no windows, no lights. It was just this silver banana shape. It was big. It wasn't a balloon. It just moved like machinery would move, like a plane would move in a straight line behind this house, and it went behind the white side, and I'm sort of mesmerised looking at it, and my parents are talking to me or doing whatever, and they've not noticed that I'm just mesmerised by this thing. And it went behind the house, and I thought, oh, it's going to come out the other side, it's going to come out the other side. I looked to the other side, and nothing came out. There was just a puff of smoke on the other side, and there was nothing else there. And then I just said to them, look, it was there. But yeah, nobody saw. Fortunately, they were just sat the wrong way around and didn't see anything.
So, and this, how close was it? Was it kind of in the distance and you saw it go behind, or was it close?
It was close. Yeah, it was close. It's only the length of the garden. So it's just, a normal standard garden length. It was a long garden, but not massive. And then an alleyway, and then the house. So it was pretty close, yeah.
But the object, was it close to your house, or were you looking at it sort of where it was far away, as in?
Oh, yeah, it was behind the house in the distance, so it went behind that house. So yeah.
And how close to the ground do you think it was?
It was roof level on the house, so it went behind the roof of the house, and then it didn't come out the other side, but I saw it go behind.
So the object was that close that was actually came down to the level of your house and disappeared behind it?
Yeah, it was roof level. You could see it. I could see it really clearly.
Yeah.
And I've tried to see if there's anything else that sort of shape in any other experience. I've never found anything with anyone saying anything like that. Yeah. I don't know what that was, but it wasn't a balloon. It was big,
Yeah. How big do you think it was?
Well, I mean, it was probably the size of the roof, because it was just sort of, it went behind it, but it was big enough for me to see from that distance. And it was big.
Yeah, I mean, there might be, because there's some really good UFO groups that, there might be somebody listening that might be able to shed some light on that. People study these kinds of sightings, and so somebody might be able to.
Yeah, I've seen things about cigar shaped and things like that, or cylinder shaped. But I've never seen anything like that. But it was very definitely curved. I mean, that's how I described it, as banana shaped, because it was curved like that.
Yeah. And the little golden people and the peacocks, how big were they?
small, really, really small. They were tiny, yeah. So they came out of like the end of this like periscope thing.
Yeah.
And they were sort of, the palm of your hands. You could fit them in the palm of your hand. They were little, just little tiny little people.
So the people themselves would perhaps have been perhaps a couple of inches or less
Yeah,
in
yeah,
size. And
yeah.
did they have expressions?
I don't remember faces or anything. I
No.
just remember them as just genderless, kind of little
Yeah.
golden people. Yeah. I don't remember clothing or anything. They may not, I don't think they had clothing. They were just tiny little beautiful little golden people.
It's really beautiful because there you are a bit fed up, it's light and you'd rather be outside playing and you didn't really want to go to bed. And it's almost like they've come to cheer you up in some
It
way.
really
There's
felt like a
this,
display. It was like a show.
yeah,
It was like a little show and a little play. And it was like,
yeah.
this is for you kind of thing. It was
But
beautiful. Yeah.
it's interesting because then they've kind of got your attention. And if it happened in this order, and I don't know if it did, but then if you've noticed that and then you look up at the carousel, it's almost kind of hypnotic because the carousel is going around and around and around. And I'm just wondering whether that could have led you into some kind of hypnotic,
Yeah.
uh,
See, I don't know how long that
state.
went on for.
Yeah.
I just have this memory of it, but I don't remember how long it lasted. And
Mm.
it could have been just really dreamlike and gone on for quite some time. I don't know, but it felt like few minutes to me.
Yeah. Can you remember any of the colours of the carousel or the peacocks?
The peacocks were just totally peacocky, peacock colours. They weren't
Yeah.
anything different. I
Yeah.
can't remember. I remember they were carousel horses, but I can't remember what colour they were.
It's absolutely magical. I love that so much. And I am wondering whether, I mean, I don't know whether you've listened to Arrival of the Fairy Host, that episode where the little girl, who's obviously telling it as an adult now, but as when she was a little girl, and I think she was around the age of 3 or 4. I think
Yeah,
because that's the kind of age that I was seeing things, and I think she was the same age, 3 or 4. And she was she had seen some fairies in the garden, and I think they're maybe in the pinks in her garden, and sort of felt that was quite matter of fact. But it was when she was in bed one night that
I think I
this,
did hear that one because I remember thinking, oh
yeah,
gosh, that's quite. I felt a bit of kinship with that one.
that's
Yeah,
right. Yeah, it'd be nice to put you both in touch with each other.
yeah,
Yeah, if you'd both like to do that, we'll definitely do that. I It makes me think of, because after that initial experience, she then had all of these
yeah.
recurring dreams after that, where she would see her slippers on a rug and then it would go out of the window. But
Oh gosh,
what,
that's interesting. Because
yeah,
I only remembered about the Burgundy Kingdom recently. Is things come back to you, don't they, as you start opening up and remembering them a bit more.
this
Um,
is the thing.
and
Yeah.
I hadn't placed the recurring dream together with that experience before until I started thinking about it, and then I remembered, yeah, I was having that recurring dream around the same time.
Mm, mm. But you felt like the Burgundy Kingdom was somewhere nice to go.
Oh yeah, it was wonderful. Yeah, I remember just desperately trying to get back there when the dream stopped, and just thinking, oh, I hope it comes tonight. How can I, what can you do? Just go to sleep and just hope that it's going to come back. But I remember this kind of desperate feeling that it's gone away, and I just want it to come back. I don't remember anything about, what went on there, but I just remember it was wonderful. I wanted to go back. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. When they stopped, were you around the same age or were you older?
Older, I think. It's probably, I mean, it's difficult to remember what ages you
Yeah,
were, isn't it? I'm
I
I'm
know.
thinking I'm around about 7, when these things occurred, but it could be something either way. I don't know. But yeah, I think the experience with the peacocks was round about my birthday, because my birthday's midsummer, so I know it was around that time. So I obviously had changed age, because it was round about birthday time. But yeah, I can't place my finger exactly on the ages.
But the dreams, did they last for sort of less than a year then?
Yeah, I think so. It was months. Yeah, it wasn't. Yeah, it didn't go on for years. Unfortunately, I would have loved it to, because I really enjoyed them.
I mean, you could try reconnecting back with it. I mean, of course, there's the obvious option of going to a regression therapist.
Yeah.
You know, as long as they're fully qualified and trained and what have you, they can kind of lead you back there. I've thought of doing this for my own early memories. I mean, I would like to. I don't know what it would reveal. You know, because yeah, I have memories of being 3 or 4, and I know I was that age because we were living in this place in Jersey that my dad built, and then when I was 4, we moved down to the guest house, and that's when I started school. And I used to go out of the bedroom window.
Yeah.
I remember seeing a light outside. This was dark outside. I remember seeing a light outside, and I remember going out of the window, and I remember what it feels like, and it still sends shivers through my spine to think about it. It was a nice feeling. I remember what it felt like being at the top of a tree.
Yeah.
And the breeze at the top of the tree, and the sound of the leaves at the top of the tree. And I remember just flying off around the area, and I think I followed the back where our garden was, because my window looked out into the back garden. In fact, I shared a room with my sister. So I'd go out the back, and I seemed to be in a tree, at the top of a tree, and then I used to follow the line of trees down this field.
Yeah.
And I would go towards a place that it's still a field, and it's at the top of a really dreamlike valley that's never been touched. And I think it's because it's quite marshy.
Yeah.
Got a stream that runs all the way down. Yeah. And it actually ends up, funny enough, at this place which they've, in the last 10 years, and I would go off on dreams through. It was like dream flying over it. The top of that place, they found it was a Neolithic settlement, and they found a huge hoard of all sorts of coins and all sorts of artifacts they found. So it was a very special place that it led to.
Was there a stone circle near there?
Well, where I grew up, I was just a few fields away from Hugby, which is one of the most important, Neolithic.
It's not coincidence, is it, that these things all happen around these areas?
I know. Was there any near you? Was there any near you or near the house?
Not that I'm aware of, but I don't know the history of the area particularly. It's possible there was something around there, but I'm not aware of anything.
Yeah, I know, it's no coincidence.
I think we're just so attuned to this stuff as children. It's so easy for children to, obviously, if you're having a nice childhood, to be able to connect into these things. If you're in a loving, nurturing environment where people are kind of open, I guess, it's just easy. It's so easy for children to find this stuff and connect into it, and you just lose it as you get older.
It's very natural. Well, like you say, saying to people, "Oh, this is what happened to me." I mean, I don't know whether you ever tried to tell your friends about the peacocks and the carousel. Did you ever tell your friends?
I never told anyone. I never told any childhood friends about that when I was little. I don't know why. I didn't. I don't know if I told my mum and dad about that when I was little. I've told them about it now. But I don't think I did. I definitely told people about the UFO, and everyone just laughed and said it was a banana. So that was the end of that. But yeah, and I definitely told my parents about the little fairy that I saw with my grandparents.
Yeah.
But yeah, I never told anyone about it. I don't know. That was for me, I think. I think that was just for me, that show, and I never told
Oh,
anyone about it.
that's
I've told a
so
couple of
lovely.
friends. Yeah, I've never realised that until just now when we just talked about it just now. And I never told anyone about that, and I think it was because it was just mine. It was just my special thing, and I never told anyone about the Burgundy Kingdom dreams either. It was all connected, and it was just was my special thing, I think, and I just didn't tell anyone about it. I did tell a couple of friends about all these things recently, and they were both, absolutely like, yeah, okay, yeah, I believe you. If you ask any of my friends a word to describe me, it'd just be cynical. They'd just go, "Oh, she's so cynical. She's so." I thought people would be really shocked that I've started to, remember these things or talk about these things, because I've just known as such a sort of cynical, not into any of that kind of stuff person. But I
Gosh,
think I
that's
just lost it as an adult. It just, you go to work, you go to big school, don't you, and you meet boys, and then you go on and you study and you work hard, and it just all gets knocked out. It wasn't until, I think I said to you, didn't I, my email, it wasn't until lockdown when I was put on furlough and then I lost my job, and it gave me, for the first time since I was a child, I had time off and I had nothing to do. And I had over a year where I didn't have to do anything. I could just do what I wanted to do, and I could relax, and I went out into nature, and I started to reconnect with all these feelings, and I remembered all these things that I used to be interested in. I dug out my old folklore books, and I was just like, gosh, I used to love all this stuff and be really interested in what happened to it. And that's when it all started to flood back. And I can't remember what. I must have been someone I followed on Twitter. I don't know. Something came up on Twitter, and it was this incredible story of this woman in Ireland who had gone for a walk into the woods and slipped into fae. She touched a tree, and suddenly all the bird song disappeared, and she was lost in the woods. It's a really interesting story, and it's really easy to Google.
yeah.
And that story came up, and she'd remembered, she said, I, a grown woman, turned my coat or my jumper inside out. And I remember reading that and thinking, God, what's that about? And then, so I started to read up on it. And it was that, to get back out of when you're lost in fae, or you're lost, you turn your clothing inside out, or pull your pockets out. And that had worked for her. And she was just recounting this story. And you'd put in the comments, I'd love to talk to you about that. And I thought, oh, what's this Modern Fairy Sightings? I thought, I've seen a fairy. I know I've seen a fairy. And there's been these things in my family. And just it all just converged at the same time. It was just, miraculous, really, that it all started to come back.
It's fabulous, isn't it? Because, as you say, and many other people felt the same, in lockdown, we didn't have the distractions that we usually do. We didn't have the stresses that we usually have.
Yeah.
We've got to go and do this and, go and socialize, because even socializing is sometimes it's just, it's a distraction, and it's quite heavy and demanding in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Even when we love our friends and family and look forward to seeing them, it's still something else that we need to do. We need to think about. We need to go and do that.
Especially as you get older, and it's more difficult to get your energy up to do things.
Well, exactly. And then, like you say, you didn't have the stresses of work. You have some time to yourself, and for a lot of us, we just don't get that. We're from a very early age, we'll have our play when we're children, but as soon as we get to school, and you get up in the morning, you're getting dressed, you've got to get into school, you come home, you've got to do your homework, got to have your dinner, got to go to bed. There's always something that you need to be doing or think about doing next. And when do you get that time?
It was amazing. It was such I mean, it was an awful time, obviously, but it was such a gift to get that back, and suddenly you remember who you are, and just like, well, not my life isn't getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning and going to work and doing a job and then coming home and eating and going to sleep. You just remember who you are and get to do things that you love again. It was amazing, and that's when it all came flooding back. But it was it was just, fortune that I just saw the tweet and then saw your response and just thought, oh, okay, there are other people out there that have seen stuff. Okay, I'm going to listen to this.
Oh, I'm so glad you found it. This is exactly what it's for, because I know that feeling, and it's so nice to be able to share, isn't it, with others.
Such a relief to people, I think, to think, I can talk about this, and B, people, I'm not mad.
No.
People, other people have had these experiences, and they're so interesting to just hear them all. It's just, and there are common themes starting to develop, aren't there? You can see some common patterns coming through. Which is fascinating. It's just so important to record all this stuff.
It really is. And I think, on the kind of the idea of things being mad now, because from speaking to people, and I realize how widespread this is. I now look at all the things that we impose upon ourselves in our daily lives. And to be honest, I think that's the mad thing. That's the mad thing.
Yeah. Well, I'm working every day now to just shed those cynical layers, and just believe people, because I've built up that working every day life, and it just been a cynical person for so long, and suddenly I feel free from that, and I'm just starting to shed those layers, and just listening to these stories has really helped with that. It's been a great experience.
Yeah, good for you. I really applaud you for doing that. It sounds like you've kind of had a recognition and a remembrance of who you are.
Yeah.
And you're not going to prepare to be to have to be sort of channeled into anything anymore that you don't feel aligned with who you are, and spending your time looking into the things that interest you and that bring you joy and that make you feel alive. And that's what we're here to do, surely. I mean, we're these amazing creative human beings. We've got this beautiful planet that we live on that is just so rich and gives us so much, and here we are kind of just in a hamster wheel,
just
blinding ourselves. Exactly.
In the kind of spirit of that, recently a friend said to me, do you want to go on a ghost experience, like a ghost thing? I was like, yeah, let's do it. Now, a couple of years ago I would have said, don't be so ridiculous. But I was just like, yeah, I know, let's go along and do it. And there was a psychic there as well, which again I would have been off, this is just ridiculous. But it was so interesting. It was really fascinating. And I really enjoyed it. And I did have I think I said to you in the email, didn't I, that I'd had a really interesting experience with a tree lately.
In this section, our guest recounts an experience with 800-year-old oak tree, Old Knobley, in Mistley, Essex. Hop over to Patreon to hear that section. And is that somewhere that you can get to fairly easily from where you live? I'm just wondering whether you can kind of. It doesn't have to be that much.
It was miles away. Yeah, we did an absolute road trip mission to get there.
Yeah, but it sounds like maybe you could try connecting with some trees near you, where you are, and it doesn't matter kind of what kind of tree it is, whatever you are drawn to. I mean, whether it's an apple tree or an oak or a willow or whatever. Do you have I
do have some trees in the back garden. I've got a may tree, and I've got a sycamore, beautiful big old sycamore, and I've got an elder out the back. And I do spend quite a lot of time sitting with the trees and talking to the trees.
Oh, great. That's really good to hear, because that's really nice. And we've got an elder in the back, and I love our elder. There's two. There's one that's sort of between us and the next door, and there's another one just at the back that's probably a bit older, and they're such a lovely energy, aren't they? I do love our elders.
I think of her as a she, the elder, definitely. Yeah. I know she's a she. And she does have a lovely energy. She's just beautiful. And the wise old sycamore just sits there and watches over me. And then the may tree is it's like there's all hedgerow behind our fence that runs for quite a way, and that's all connected in and tangled in with all the hedgerow. It's full of life. It's teeming with life. and it's beautiful. Just sit there and watch the animals and listen to the trees.
It's fabulous. With your sycamore, one thing, because there's a symbolism with the sycamore that I've used in rituals before, is, the keys, the sycamore keys.
No.
So,
the little flying things that come off.
Yeah, the seeds that fly down, they're called keys.
Yeah, I didn't know.
Yeah, so you can use those and decide that this could be the key into, another world, another state, the key to remembering aspects of your childhood, the bits that you would like to remember, all these, so you can get a bit creative with it. If you've got one of those sycamore keys and sat beneath your sycamore, you can play with that a little bit and see, it's really just kind of playing. And as children, we just allow our imaginations to go wherever they want.
Yeah.
But, that's something that you can
I
try.
did when I was a child. I was always out in the garden. I was an only child, so I had a lot of time just out in the garden, playing on my own, fairy hunting, playing in the rockeries, and just trying to connect back into that, I think.
Yeah, it sounds like you're really coming back to you, and I love that. That's really great. Do you ever make anything from your elder?
No, I haven't. I thought about it last year, making some cordial, but I didn't. But I think I will this year. I will make some elderflower cordial from her.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. It's been lovely to speak to you.
Really lovely to chat to you. I just love the carousel and the peacocks. I could just see an image of that. It would make such a beautiful picture, wouldn't it? I can imagine.
Yeah. Oh, how lovely. Yeah, that would. I'm not talented enough to do that.
I know this is where I just really wish that I could draw the things that I see in my mind. One of our fellow crew, Claire Casely, she's able to just draw from her fairy encounters, and I think, oh God, imagine being able to do that.
To be able to do that. Yeah.
Well, keep me posted with how you're getting on with.
I will. I'll send you that photo of the tree as well.
Thank you. And if you if your dad or your aunt tell you any more about their own memories as well, make sure you write it down.
I might be brave and do a bit more prodding. Time to
What a treasure box of stories. Thank you so much again to our guest. It was interesting to hear about her parents' approach to understanding these experiences through the lens of their religion. Her father's interests did seem to suggest he had a leaning towards these sorts of encounters, possibly as a result of his mother's so-called superstitious way of being. And yet these are the old ways, maybe reflecting days gone by when we were more in touch with the land, ourselves, and the natural rhythms that connect us with the environment. At times the events reflected that joyful sense of childhood magic, like the pixies that visited the little boy sick in bed. Many people can recall these childhood, what mainstream reductionist thought likes to call hallucinations, during illnesses. They seem like deep explorations where we can perhaps emerge differently, stronger, maybe even with more clarity. I used to look forward in some ways to those realizations that take place during illness where you're forced to rest and dream. There's a replenishing of the body during those times, but there's also a healing of the spirit too, that's allowed when the physical routine has ceased and other energies within us rise to the surface. I've noted it in my children too when they've recovered from an illness and they spring back with vigour. The darker experiences, particularly the goblin appearance, is becoming familiar to us if you've listened to the earlier episodes. These goblins seem to enjoy turning up and feeding off fear, or perhaps they're just attracted to disturbed environments and individuals, and we are overlaying our sense of judgment on them. In any case, it's easy to imagine that someone returning from a war will be processing trauma and holding much of it within themselves due to the expectations of the time, and perhaps maybe even a lack of understanding about PTSD at the time. When people hold suffering within, no matter how good they think they are at hiding it or coping with enormous amounts of stress, it still permeates, and that suffering can be felt by others, particularly by loved ones or other sensitive souls around them. We will never know if the goblin was somehow a representation of that suffering, but we do know that they seem to rock up where or when these potent emotional states arise. It's something to bear in mind, something to look at. Particularly, they seem to turn up when people are feeling vulnerable in those emotional states, whether they be children or adults. The golden beings riding on peacocks, the carousel and journeys to the Burgundy Kingdom really have me fascinated. I remember speaking to somebody about these sorts of experiences some years ago. I think it was either before the podcast or it could have been right at the start. But they said that their memory in meeting the fair folk began with leaving their bedroom through the window towards the light, as many people have experienced. But more unusually, they remembered where they had been. They had a memory of meeting in a woodland environment with lots of other children that had been brought there by otherworldly beings. They didn't know these children, but they'd all been brought together. They'd been brought there to learn at a deep spiritual level about how they could help this world and its inhabitants, because the earth really needed their help. Our help. Perhaps that time is now, and you are one of those children listening to this. And perhaps you will awaken and answer that call. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. In future, I'm hoping to do a deeper delve into these goblin creatures and also the childhood experiences which are very close to my heart. This podcast is for everyone, but it's particularly for those who have never felt able to share their experiences but need to know that they are not alone. They may feel that they've had to hide parts of themselves that they feared would be misunderstood or ridiculed. Intuitively, I'm sensing right now that it's safe to be yourself. And in doing so, you will draw like-minded others to you and situations that reflect who you truly are. So take faith in your intuition, especially right now at this time, and step out to shine fully. New moon blessings to you. May your life bloom like the buds of early summer and always remain curious.